Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Lift. Malachi 3:3 says, "He will sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. He will purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer the Lord an offering of righteousness." A wonderful thing about God is that He is a refiner. The precious elements He works with is our hearts. Jesus says, "Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God." Those desiring to be righteous will go through many stages of purification. And the purification process is destructive, and it's oftentimes violent. You must heat an ore to the metal's boiling point, which changes the actual chemical composition of that metal, of that substance. And it separates the elements, and what results is a purified precious metal. And the purification of our hearts is no different. And in our worship assemblies, we do something a little less traditional. For the last year or so, we have reserved our evening services for a Bible study, and we discuss the sermon topic, and we talk about application, we ask questions. And past evening service we had caused me to think about something that happened to me. And I don't think I would have made the same connection without this further application of the study that we had of the sermon in the morning. And that Sunday, our preacher, he preached on the topic of justice. And he supplied us with many passages that instruct us how to be just or righteous. And in the evening service, we discussed a tiny bit of application, but really only in broad strokes. We didn't really have the time to get into the meatier matters. You know, the subtle injustices that we commit each day. Like when we come home from a long day and we're short with our spouse and say something unfair, or when our patience is running a little thin and we yell at the kids. And I want to get real vulnerable with you right now. And I think it's high time for us to really be more vulnerable with each other. And so often we come to our worship services or Bible studies or just hang out with our friends, and we put a smile on our faces, whether it's forced or not. And not to say that it isn't genuine, but we know that none of us are smiling all the time. It's gotten almost taboo in the church to openly talk about your problems, to ask for help and for prayers of the congregation from our brethren. But I'm not talking about complaining about things, but what James says in James chapter 5, he says, confess to one another and pray for each other. And it's almost an unwritten rule that you have to be happy and positive while around your Christian friends. And the reality is, though, that there can be no peaks without those valleys. And this is what I want to share with you right now. One of those valleys that I had, an unjust experience that I had recently. And it was dinner time, and my 6-year-old Artie, he asked for juice or milk. And I said, no, you can have water. And he responded with, I never get anything but water. And I reacted to him with anger. And when my wife tried to help me see what I was doing, I got defensive at her and directed all of my frustration at Artie of his ingratitude, and I directed that right towards Sarah. And after I had led a prayer for dinner, I got up and I said I wasn't eating right then, and I really stayed angry for most of that night. And even after Sarah came and she apologized to me, I didn't respond in a very kind or apologetic way. And I woke up that night around midnight, and I had a bit of a sore throat and some congestion, so I decided I was going to take a shower. And as I was showering, I reflected on the Bible verses from that lesson that we just had. And I reflected on our discussion in the evening and my meditation afterwards. And I realized that my actions toward my son were unjust. How would using anger teach him gratitude? How would carrying a grudge, no matter how short-lived, teach or help my wife to empathize with me and be able to help me out. And as I was in the shower, I broke down in tears and in shame of how I treated my family so unjustly and how I was behaving. And right after a lesson about justice, what a hypocrite. I was compelled to ask God to forgive me. And the next morning, I asked Sarah and I asked Artie to forgive me also. And I made a determination to do better. And this is why we can't just read the scriptures. We must meditate upon them. And we must apply lives every day. Because practicing justice doesn't only mean treating people fairly and being equitable. It also means righting those wrongs and those offenses that we commit. We've all done things wrong to God. And if you haven't made yourself right with Him, the only one who is fully just, don't delay. And if there are people in your life that you've wronged, that you have been unjust to, make those things right. Find someone to talk to give some love to today, and lift somebody up.